Hi everyone. Today, we're starting a new chapter on access and use and reference and user services, focusing on archive management. Archives are not just about keeping old records. They are about helping people find and use the right records when they need them. An archive only has value if users can access the information properly and responsibly. In this chapter, we'll look at how archivists manage access to records, handle user requests, and provide reference services to researchers, staff, and the public. We'll also discuss why some records are open, some are restricted, and how archivists explain these rules to users. This topic is important because, as future archivists or records professionals, you will work directly with users, not just with records. Your role is to guide users, protect records, and ensure information is used correctly. Let's keep things simple, practical, and interactive as we go through this chapter. All right, let's begin. At the end of this chapter, there are 4 main things you are expected to understand and be able to do. First, you should be able to define the concept of archives access and use. This means you will understand what it really means for archives to be accessed by users, and how those archives are used for purposes such as research, legal evidence, administration, and historical study. You should be able to explain that access is not always open or unlimited, but is guided by rules, policies, and ethical considerations. Second, you should be able to explain the principle of access as articulated by the International Council on Archives, ICA. This outcome focuses on understanding international standards and professional values. You are expected to explain how the ICA promotes the right to access archives while also emphasizing the protection of sensitive information, privacy, and national security. This shows that archival access must balance openness with responsibility. Third, you should be able to discuss the important elements involved in archival reference and staff services. This means you will understand the role of archivists and archival staff in assisting users, managing access requests, providing guidance, and ensuring proper handling of archival materials. You should be able to describe how reference services act as a bridge between users and archival collections. Finally, you should be able to differentiate the various types of archival finding aids and their functions in facilitating access to archival materials. This means you can identify different finding aids such as accession registers, guides, inventories, and catalogs, and explain how each one helps users locate and understand archival records more efficiently. Overall, these learning outcomes ensure that by the end of the chapter, you not only understand the theory of archival access, but also how access is provided in practice through policies, professional services, and descriptive tools. First, let's understand what we mean by access in archive management. Access refers to the process of providing colleagues, selected users, or the wider public with the ability to consult archival records. This does not just mean opening the doors to the archive. It also includes providing facilities, finding aids, clear procedures, and professional advice so users can locate and understand records properly. Now, moving beyond the definition, access in archives is about the user's ability to explore and use archival materials. These users may be researchers, scholars, students, or members of the public. The archivist's role is to make records available while ensuring they are used responsibly and according to rules. Traditionally, access to archives was mainly physical. In other words, users had to visit the archive in person. They would come to the reading room and examine original records directly, under supervision. This method allowed close interaction with primary sources, but required time, travel, and physical presence. However, as technology developed, access to archives has changed. In the contemporary context, digital access has become increasingly common. Archives now offer online catalogs, digital finding aids, and digitized records. As a result, users can search and explore archival collections remotely without needing to visit the archive physically. This makes access faster, wider, and more convenient, especially for users who are far away. When we talk about access in archive management, it's important to understand that it is more than just entering an archive building. In fact, the concept of access goes beyond physical entry. It includes the policies, procedures, and technologies that control how users interact with archival materials. For example, access policies decide who can view certain records, procedures explain how records should be requested or handled, and technologies such as online catalogs and digital platforms determine how users search and access information. Because of this, access must be carefully planned and managed. Archivists do not simply allow free access to everything. Instead, they create structured systems that make records available while still protecting sensitive or restricted information. More importantly, access is a cornerstone of openness in archives. By providing access, archives help democratize historical knowledge. This means that history is not limited to a small group of experts, but can be explored by students, researchers, and the general public. As a result, when users are given access to primary sources, such as original documents, photographs, or records, they can engage directly with authentic historical evidence. This direct engagement helps users develop a deeper and more accurate understanding of the past, rather than relying only on secondary sources. In short, access in archives is about creating fair, organized, and meaningful ways for people to interact with original records, supporting openness, learning, and public understanding of history. Let's talk about access policies. Access policies are rules and guidelines that determine how people can use archival materials. They are essential because they shape the way an archive functions and fulfills its purpose. Archives are custodians of historical records and cultural heritage, which means they are responsible not only for keeping records safe, but also for making them available to people. However, there is often a tension between protecting sensitive information and providing open access. This is where access policies become important. A good access policy ensures that archives can preserve sensitive or confidential records to protect individuals, organizations, or legal obligations. Provide access to users for research, education, or public engagement. Support transparency and knowledge sharing while maintaining ethical and legal standards. In short, access policies guide archivists in balancing preservation with accessibility, ensuring that archives remain both secure and useful to the public. Significance of the principle of access. The principle of access is one of the most important ideas in archive management. It ensures that archival records are available to those who need them, while also maintaining responsibility and security. Let's look at its significance point by point. 1. Public right to access. The first principle is that the public has the right to access archives of public bodies. This means that records created by government institutions or other public organizations should be open for research, learning, and public use. Similarly, private organizations are encouraged to open their archives as much as possible, so that history and knowledge are shared widely. 2. Transparency about archives. The second principle is that archives should be made known to users. Institutions must inform people not only about the records that are accessible, but also about materials that are closed or restricted. This includes being clear about any rules or limitations that affect access. By doing this, archives maintain trust and transparency with users. 3. Proactive approach to access. Archives should take a proactive approach to access. This means they don't just wait for users to ask for records. They actively promote their collections, provide guidance, and help users navigate the archives. This approach ensures that information is not just preserved, but also used and understood by the public.
We've already talked about the public's right to access archives, transparency, and proactive support. Now let's look at how archives manage restrictions, ensure fairness, and support human rights. Equal and fair access. Archives must ensure that access is provided fairly to all users. This means no discrimination based on status, background, or purpose of research. Everyone should have the same opportunity to consult available records under the same conditions. For example, a university student researching local history and a professional historian studying the same topic should both be given access to the same archival materials, following the same rules. While fairness is important, archives also contain sensitive or private information, so restrictions must be clearly defined. Next is clear restrictions and legal compliance. Institutions holding archives must ensure that restrictions on access are clear, time-bound, and legally justified. They should respect privacy rights and the rights of private record owners. For example, a government archive containing personnel files may restrict access for 50 years to protect privacy. At the same time, users should be informed about these restrictions so they understand why certain records are non-accessible. Finally, archives also have a role in supporting justice and human rights, even when some materials are normally restricted. Next point is an access for victims of serious crimes. Institutions holding archives must ensure that victims of serious crimes under international law can access records that help them assert their human rights and document violations. This is important even if the archives are generally closed to the public. Access in these cases is about justice, accountability, and historical evidence. Examples: in Malaysia, records related to past conflicts, human rights violations, where war crimes may be restricted for the public, but survivors or researchers documenting these events should still have access for legal or advocacy purposes. International tribunals make archives containing evidence of crimes against humanity accessible to victims and legal teams, even when the general public cannot see them. So far, we've covered fairness, restrictions, and access for justice. Now let's move on to how archives handle denials, operational issues, and the role of archivists themselves. Okay, next is right to appeal a denial of access. Users have the right to challenge a decision if access to records is denied. This ensures transparency and fairness in how archives operate. Example: a researcher requests access to a restricted file and is denied. The archive should provide a clear explanation and allow the researcher to appeal or request a review. Even when records are available, archives may face practical challenges that can affect access. Next is an operational constraints should not block access. Institutions must ensure that staffing, opening hours, or other operational limits do not prevent users from accessing records. Archives should plan and manage resources to maintain reliable access. For example, an archive may be busy or have limited staff, but they should still provide appointments or digital access options so researchers can consult records. Now, let's look at the role of archivists in access management. Archivists have access to all closed archives. Archivists themselves must have full access to closed or restricted records. This allows them to perform necessary work, such as preservation, cataloging, or research support. Example: even if a file is restricted to the public for 50 years, archivists can review and prepare it for future access, ensuring the archive remains usable and organized. Finally, archivists also play a key role in deciding who can access records. Archivists participate in access decisions. Archivists are involved in the decision-making process regarding access, balancing legal requirements, privacy, and public interest. They ensure that access is fair, consistent, and aligned with archival policies. Example: if a researcher requests sensitive records, archivists may review laws, privacy concerns, and the user's purpose before granting access. Now that we've discussed the principles of access, let's look at some key challenges archival institutions face when balancing access with other responsibilities and how they manage these challenges. Archives face several key challenges when trying to provide access while protecting their collections. One of the most significant is the preservation versus access dilemma. Archivists must carefully balance the need to preserve delicate and sensitive materials with the desire to allow researchers and the public to use them. Unrestricted access can risk damaging fragile items, such as historical manuscripts, photographs, or maps. For example, a 200-year-old letter from Malaysia's independence period may be too fragile for frequent handling. So archives often provide digital copies or supervised viewing to protect the original while still enabling research. Another challenge involves legal and ethical considerations. Many archival materials contain sensitive or private information, which raises issues such as copyright compliance, privacy, and cultural sensitivities. For instance, personnel records or family photo albums may require permission before researchers can access them. While certain indigenous manuscripts may only be viewed with guidance from the respective community, archivists must develop clear policies and guidelines to navigate these legal and ethical dilemmas responsibly. Finally, resource limitations can also hinder access. Archives often face constraints in financial and human resources, which can make it difficult to digitize collections, maintain technological infrastructure, or provide adequate staff training. Limited budgets or staff shortages may delay the creation of digital records or reduce the quality of services offered to users. Another major challenge facing archival institutions is inclusivity and representation. Archives have a responsibility to ensure that their collections reflect the diverse voices, communities, and perspectives of society. However, acquiring materials from underrepresented groups can be difficult, leading to gaps in the historical record and perpetuating historical biases. For example, the experiences of minority communities, women, or marginalized groups in Malaysia may not be well documented in existing archives, which means future researchers might have an incomplete understanding of the past. Archivists must actively seek out these materials and work with communities to ensure a balanced and inclusive collection. Archives also face technological barriers, particularly in the move toward digitization. While digital access can make records available to a wider audience, implementing and maintaining digital infrastructure is costly and complex. Institutions may struggle with insufficient funding, lack of trained staff, cybersecurity risks, and the digital divide, which can prevent some users from accessing digital archives. For instance, rural or low-income users may have limited internet access, making online archival materials difficult to reach. Archives must address both social and technological challenges to ensure that collections are inclusive, accessible, and secure, so that everyone can benefit from historical records. To address the various challenges in archives, institutions implement several key strategies. One of the most important is digitization initiatives. By scanning and uploading records online, archives can increase access while protecting fragile originals, making historical materials available to researchers and the public without risking damage. Another strategy is capacity building and training. Archives invest in staff development, providing training in preservation techniques, digital technologies, and ethical access management. This ensures that archivists are equipped to handle both traditional and digital records efficiently. Public-private partnerships are also valuable. Collaborating with universities, corporations, or technology providers can help archives secure funding, infrastructure, and expertise, which may be beyond the capacity of a single institution. Additionally, archives engage in advocacy for supportive policies. By promoting legal frameworks, funding programs, and government support, institutions can ensure that archives have the resources and authority needed to balance access, preservation, and inclusivity. Finally, community engagement and outreach is crucial. Working with local communities, underrepresented groups, and cultural organizations helps archives acquire diverse materials, reflect multiple perspectives, and encourage public participation in preserving history. In combination, these strategies allow archival institutions to overcome challenges related to preservation, access, legal issues, technology, and representation, ensuring that archives remain relevant, inclusive, and accessible to everyone. So, to wrap up, the concepts of access and use in archives are really the backbone of what archives do. They're not just about storing old papers. They help us preserve our cultural heritage while also sharing knowledge with researchers, students, and the public. Think of archives as gateways to history, helping us understand who we are and where we come from. By embracing access and use, archives also democratize history. That means historical knowledge isn't just for experts. It's available to everyone, so society can be informed, engaged, and enriched by the past. Now, let's bring this into the modern world. Technology is changing archives fast. Digital platforms, online catalogs, and scanned records make it easier than ever to access materials, but archives must adapt their strategies to make sure that access and use remain a priority, even while protecting the originals. Now that we've explored access and use principles, let's focus on reference and staff services, which are essential in helping users make sense of archival collections. Think of archivists and reference staff as guides, navigators, and facilitators in the archival world. They ensure that researchers, students, and the public can find, interpret, and use historical records effectively. Reference and staff services act as the bridge between users and archival materials, helping them access primary sources, manuscripts, photographs, and other historical records. One of their main roles is responding to research inquiries, assisting users in navigating catalogs, finding aids, and indexes so that they can locate specific materials and understand the scope of the collections. Through reference interviews, archivists discuss the user's research goals, clarify questions, and suggest effective search strategies, ensuring that the research process is both efficient and targeted. They also tailor their assistance depending on the user's experience. For example, guiding a novice student through digitized photographs of local history while directing a graduate researcher to original manuscripts and unpublished documents. By helping users identify, access, and interpret archival materials, reference staff not only save time, but also foster independent research skills, enabling users to engage meaningfully with historical records. In essence, reference and staff services transform archives from mere storage spaces into accessible, navigable, and educational resources, connecting users with the past in a meaningful and productive way. In any archival institution, the reference section is the first point of contact for anyone seeking information about the archives. This area is designed to assist researchers, students, the general public, and even government or corporate officials in understanding what records are available and how to access them. Users can make inquiries in person, by email, telephone, fax, or letter, giving them multiple ways to connect with the institution. The reference section not only provides information about the holdings, but also helps users navigate the collections efficiently, ensuring that research is productive and that archival materials are used responsibly. Now, let's move on to the topic of managing the archival reference area. This is an important aspect of archives because it directly affects how easily researchers, students, and the public can access and use historical materials. Proper management ensures that archival materials are well organized, accessible, and secure, which helps preserve the integrity of the records while supporting efficient research. Managing the reference area involves two key aspects: organization and accessibility, and physical space and security. In terms of organization, archival materials should be arranged according to established principles like provenance and original order, and comprehensive finding aids, inventories, or cataloging systems should be developed to help users locate specific records. For example, a university archive might have an indexed catalog of manuscripts related to Malaysian history, enabling students or researchers to quickly find relevant documents. On the other hand, physical space and security are also crucial. Archives must implement security measures, such as restricted access areas, surveillance, or climate-controlled storage, to protect materials from theft, damage, or mishandling. Rare or fragile items, like historical maps or manuscripts, may require staff approval for access. At the same time, creating a comfortable and conducive workspace with proper lighting, ergonomic seating, and quiet study areas supports a positive research environment. For instance, individual workstations equipped with computers allow researchers to examine both digital and physical materials efficiently. By effectively managing the archival reference area, archives ensure that researchers can access information safely and efficiently, while also protecting valuable historical records. This matters because the ease and quality of access can directly influence the success of research projects and the preservation of our cultural heritage. In managing an archival reference area, one of the most important aspects is having trained and knowledgeable staff to assist users. These staff members play a crucial role in guiding researchers, students, or other visitors to locate and access relevant records efficiently. Being knowledgeable means they understand the collections in depth, know the context of the records, and can provide accurate advice on research strategies and proper handling of fragile materials. They also explain how to use catalogs and finding aids and ensure that users follow archival policies. Beyond human assistance, reproduction services are essential in helping users access materials without compromising the integrity of the originals. This includes facilities for photocopying, scanning, and providing digital copies. For example, a student researching historical faculty records may request scanned copies rather than handling the original documents. Furthermore, in today's digital age, digital access is increasingly important. Online catalogs, digital repositories, and remote reference services allow users to search and view records even from outside the archive. For instance, the National Archives of Malaysia provides digitized colonial-era documents accessible online, which reduces the need for physical handling while supporting research. By combining knowledgeable staff assistance, reproduction facilities, and digital access, archival reference services ensure that users can efficiently and safely interact with the collections while preserving their long-term integrity. Another key aspect in managing an archival reference area is establishing clear user policies and guidelines. These policies help ensure that users understand their responsibilities when accessing archival materials and that the records are protected for long-term use. Two important components of these policies are the access policy and the code of ethics. The access policy outlines who can use the records, under what conditions, and any restrictions that may apply, such as handling sensitive or confidential information. The Code of Ethics reminds users of their responsibility to respect the integrity of the records, avoid unauthorized reproduction, and maintain proper conduct within the archival space. Equally important is a well-organized system for records retrieval and return. This emphasizes the use of a formal on-request system, where users must request specific documents rather than browsing freely, ensuring that records are tracked and handled carefully. Proper return procedures are also essential to make sure that records are returned promptly, in good condition, and correctly filed back into the archive. By implementing clear user policies, a strong code of ethics, and efficient retrieval and return processes, archival reference areas can provide effective, secure, and responsible access to records for all users. Now let's take a look at access control and security measures in archives. When dealing with sensitive or restricted materials, archives must implement strict procedures to protect the integrity and confidentiality of their collections, while still allowing legitimate access for research. The first step is establishing access policies. Archives need to clearly define and document the rules for accessing restricted materials. These policies guide who can view certain records, under what conditions, and for what purposes. For example, a government archive containing classified historical documents may allow only researchers affiliated with recognized universities or approved government projects to consult these files. Next is user authentication and authorization. Before a researcher can access restricted materials, the archive verifies their identity, affiliation, and purpose of research. This might include providing a university ID, a research proposal, or a letter of recommendation from a supervisor. This ensures that only authorized individuals can access sensitive information. In addition, archives often require a restricted access request process. Researchers submit a formal written request explaining the materials they want to access, their research purpose, and how they intend to use the information. Designated staff or committees then review the request and decide whether to grant or deny access. For instance, A historian studying colonial-era trade policies would submit a proposal detailing their objectives, which the archive evaluates carefully before granting permission. Once access is approved, researchers may need to sign restricted access agreements. These agreements outline the terms of access, including restrictions on reproduction, publication, or sharing of information. For example, a scholar accessing rare manuscripts may be prohibited from taking photos or publishing direct quotes without permission, ensuring the materials are protected and used ethically. Finally, security measures are put in place to physically and electronically protect restricted materials. This can include secure storage rooms, restricted access areas, keycard systems, and surveillance cameras. Rare maps or fragile documents may be kept in climate-controlled rooms with monitored access so that only authorized staff and researchers can enter. The key consideration here is managing restricted archives effectively. Archives must strike a careful balance between security and accessibility. By combining clear policies, authentication, request processes, access agreements, and security measures, archival institutions can ensure that sensitive materials are protected while still supporting legitimate research and public interest. In addition to their core duties, reference staff may also undertake special projects to enhance the way users interact with archival materials and to provide additional guidance on the nature and extent of the archives. These projects can take many forms. One example is improving finding aids, such as indexing particular series or creating more detailed guides, which makes it easier for researchers to locate specific records. Reference staff may also develop pamphlets or publicity materials to help users understand the holdings of the archive and the tools available for research. Another important type of project is cataloging books in the library or other related collections, which ensures that users can access both archival and library resources efficiently. Reference staff may also carry out research on particular archives, creating summaries, inventories, explanations, and library content, or background information that can assist future researchers. Additionally, they may plan internal exhibitions, which highlight important collections or themes within the archives, making the materials more visible and engaging to the public. By undertaking these projects, reference staff go beyond simply responding to inquiries. They proactively enhance access, improve research tools, and promote greater understanding of archival holdings, ultimately supporting a more informed and engaged user community. Now let's look at how archival institutions manage outreach programs, an essential way for reference staff to connect archives with the public and promote the value of historical records. One of the most effective tools today is an online presence and social media. Archives can use platforms like Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter to share updates, highlight interesting items from their collections, and announce upcoming events or exhibitions. For example, a Malaysian archive might post rare photographs from the 1957 independence period, giving followers both historical insight and encouragement to visit or research the collections. Social media also allows archives to engage with users directly, answering questions and sparking discussion about historical topics. Another important strategy is creating engaging outreach materials. Brochures, pamphlets, posters, and digital content can explain how to navigate the archive, highlight specific collections, or provide tips for conducting research. For example, a pamphlet might feature a step-by-step guide for students on how to use finding aids to locate documents about local history. Educational programs and workshops are another key outreach tool. These can include hands-on sessions, lectures, or training for the public and researchers on the importance of records and how to use them effectively. For instance, a workshop for high school students could teach them how to research historical events using archival photographs, newspapers, or manuscripts. Archives can also partner with schools and educational institutions, integrating archival materials into the curriculum so that students can learn about history directly from primary sources. Finally, exhibitions and displays help make archival collections visible and engaging. Curated exhibitions can focus on specific themes, such as Malaysia's cultural heritage, important historical events, or notable figures. For example, an exhibition on traditional Malay crafts could include photographs, manuscripts, and artifacts, allowing visitors to experience history in a tangible and interactive way. By combining online engagement, outreach materials, educational programs, school partnerships, and exhibitions, reference staff ensure that archives are not just storage spaces, but active, accessible, and relevant centers for learning and public engagement. These strategies help foster appreciation for history, encourage research, and build stronger connections between archives and the community. Let's now talk about finding aids, which are essential tools in archival work. Finding aids include a range of descriptive media, such as registers, guides, inventories, and indexes, that help establish both physical and intellectual control over archival holdings. These tools make it possible for researchers to locate particular records or information efficiently, without having to search blindly through large collections. When we talk about physical control, we mean that archivists know how much material the archives contains, where it is stored, and that it is safely housed. For example, an archive may keep a detailed register of all documents in a collection on Malaysian independence, noting which shelf or box each item is in. This ensures that materials are organized and can be retrieved quickly when needed. Intellectual control, on the other hand, refers to knowing the provenance, form, and informational content of the records. In other words, archivists understand where the records came from, what type of documents they are, and what information they contain. For instance, an index of colonial-era trade documents might indicate which letters relate to exports, which to imports, and which contain policy discussions, allowing researchers to identify the documents relevant to their study without going through every single item. It can be said that finding aids are the roadmap to an archive. They help archivists maintain order, protect materials, and guide researchers in efficiently locating and understanding records, making archival research more organized and productive. In managing archives, one of the most important strategies for ensuring both accessibility and preservation of records is the use of a variety of finding aids. Finding aids act as tools that guide users through the archival collections, helping them locate specific records while also understanding their context and provenance. Firstly, some finding aids are created by the original agency or person who produced the records. These include registers, indexes, and filing systems. Registers, for example, may record the chronological receipt or dispatch of documents, while indexes often provide references to important topics or names within the collection. Filing systems reflect how the organization or individual originally managed their records. These aids are particularly useful because they preserve the original order and context, which is critical for understanding why the records were created and how they were used. For instance, a government department's index of correspondence can help researchers trace decisions or policies over time. Secondly, archivists create professional finding aids to improve accessibility and organization. These include accession registers, which document the acquisition of new records and help track their provenance, descriptive inventories, which summarize the contents of record groups, making it easier for users to know what is available without handling the originals, and guides to holdings, which provide overviews of collections, highlighting major themes, formats, or periods covered. For example, an archive of university records may include a guide to holdings that outlines all faculty meeting minutes, student registers, and administrative reports by year. Finally, there are compiled finding aids, which aggregate information from multiple sources for easier research. These include special lists, which focus on specific topics or events, subject files, which organize records by theme, source analyses, which evaluate the content and reliability of records, reference guides, which provide instructions or advice on how to use the collections, and media guides, which help locate audio, video, or photographic materials. For example, an archive may create a subject file guide for all materials related to a national event, combining newspaper clippings, official reports, and photographs, allowing researchers to access a complete picture of that event without searching multiple collections individually. by maintaining a range of finding aids from original creator tools to professional archivist aids and compiled guides. Archives not only make it easier for users to locate information, but also ensure that the historical context, provenance, and integrity of the records are preserved. These tools are essential for supporting research, teaching, and institutional memory, while also protecting the physical and digital integrity of archival holdings. Now, let's go deeper into the functions and characteristics of finding aids in managing archives. Finding aids are essential tools that guide users through archival collections, helping them locate specific records, understand their context, and use them properly, while also preserving the integrity of the archives. First, we have finding aids created by the original agency or person who produced the records. These include registers, indexes, and filing systems. Registers function as chronological logs of records or activities, showing the order in which documents were received or created. Their main characteristic is being systematic and chronological, often including key details such as dates, names, and brief descriptions. For example, a government department's letter register helps track correspondence, showing what was received and when. Indexes function as quick reference tools, guiding users to specific information without scanning every document. They are usually arranged alphabetically or thematically and point to file numbers or document locations. For example, an index of personnel files allows a researcher to locate a staff member's records quickly. Filing systems function to organize documents according to subject, function, or department, maintaining the original operational order. Their characteristic is reflecting the creator's logic, which helps preserve context. An example would be a company's accounting files organized by year and type of report. These original finding aids are valuable because they preserve the original order and context of records, which is critical for understanding how they were used. Next, we have finding aids created by archivists to enhance accessibility and understanding. Accession registers function to document the acquisition of new records, recording details like source, date, and description, and they are characterized by being systematic, chronological, and detailed. For example, a library accession register lists all donated manuscripts with their donors and dates, helping maintain provenance. Descriptive inventories function as summaries of record groups or series, allowing users to know what is available without handling originals. Their characteristics include being detailed and explanatory, providing information on the scope, arrangement, and content. For instance, an inventory of university exam papers might organize records by year, subject, and department. Guides to holdings function to provide overviews of entire collections, highlighting themes, formats, and coverage periods. They are characterized by broad descriptions, useful for orientation and research planning. For example, a museum archive might produce a guide to its photographic collection, highlighting the major subjects, periods, and types of images. Finally, there are compiled finding aids which integrate information from multiple sources to facilitate research. Special lists function to highlight records on specific topics, events, or functions, often cross-referencing multiple collections, and are characterized by being thematic and focused. For example, a list of materials relating to a national election may combine correspondence, reports, and photographs. Subject files function to organize records by theme across series, helping users navigate related information that may be dispersed in different collections. Their characteristic is being thematic and researcher-friendly. Source analyses function to evaluate and summarize records' content, reliability, and relevance, and are analytical, often supporting research planning. For example, an analysis of colonial-era letters might summarize key policies and social conditions. Reference guides function to instruct and guide users in navigating collections. They are practical, detailed, and user-focused. For instance, a guide may explain how to access court records or archival maps. Media guides function to locate non-textual materials such as photographs, films, or audio recordings, characterized by organization by format, date, or subject, sometimes including technical details. An example is a guide to historical photographs of urban development sorted by decade. by understanding the functions and characteristics of all these finding aids, those created by the original creators, developed by archivists, and compiled from multiple sources. Archives can ensure that users can efficiently locate, understand, and use records, while also maintaining their context, integrity, and historical value. Each type of finding aid complements the others, providing multiple pathways for research and supporting the core goal of archives, preserving knowledge while making it accessible. Now let's discuss planning finding aids, which is a critical step in ensuring that archives can provide effective guidance to users without wasting resources. Proper planning helps archivists produce finding aids that are useful, relevant, and aligned with the archive's priorities. Before beginning a finding aids program, the archive must consider its overall goals and which collections are most important to document in detail. When planning, archivists ask several key questions. First, who are the users? Understanding whether the primary users are students, researchers, government officials, or the general public helps determine the level of detail and format of the finding aid. For example, a finding aid for academic researchers might include detailed inventories and indexes, while one for the general public might be simpler and more descriptive. Second, what do the users need? This involves identifying the types of information or records that are most in demand and which parts of the collection require easier access. For instance, if many researchers request materials on Malaysia's independence movement, the finding aids should highlight and organize these documents clearly. Finally, archivists must consider what the resources of the archive can reasonably provide. Developing comprehensive finding aids can be time-consuming and labor-intensive, so priorities must be set based on staffing, funding, and available tools. The archive may choose to focus first on high-demand collections or historically significant materials, ensuring that the most important resources are accessible while managing workloads efficiently. In summary, planning finding aids thoughtfully ensures that the archive meets user needs, supports research effectively, and uses its resources wisely, creating a roadmap that benefits both archivists and users alike. In conclusion, finding aids are essential tools for researchers, helping them plan and conduct research efficiently. The detailed information provided in finding aids allows users to assess the relevance of a collection to their research topic before spending time on an in-depth examination. This is especially important in large archival repositories with extensive holdings, where locating the right materials without guidance can be overwhelming. In today's digital age, finding aids can also be made available online, giving users remote access to archival collections. Online finding aids complement digitized materials and allow researchers to explore and evaluate collections before deciding whether to visit the archive in person. By providing this roadmap to archival resources, finding aids not only save time and effort, but also make the research process more organized, focused, and productive, ensuring that users can make the most of the information the archives hold.